Alright guys, I'm going to try and keep this brief because I know a lot of you guys got this from class, but I noticed that some of you guys did not. Some of us were still struggling with the concept of what exactly vertical angles are. I would walk around and I would be like, hey, is this part of a linear pair or is it vertical? And you guys would just guess. And that just tells me that you don't really know what's going on, and that's okay. Maybe you guys never talked about vertical angles before, but I'm going to clarify that now, all right? So as I like to say, vertical angles are angles that are across from each other, all right? So for instance, A is directly across from O, all right? Like this is across from it, all right? A is next to E and it's next to I, but it's across from O. So we would say that A and O are vertical angles, and that means that they are congruent. So I could mark them like this, and I could also write a statement. I could say that angle A is congruent to angle O. I could also write that the measure of angle A, the number of degrees right here, would have to be equal to the measure of angle O. All right, and that's, again, that kind of gets into the difference between congruence and equality, but those are congruent because they are vertical angles. And then just by the same token, I is congruent to E because they are vertical angles. You can see that E is next to O and it's next to A, so we would say that A and E are adjacent and E and O are adjacent, but we would also say that E and I are vertical angles, and that makes them congruent. So again, we could write another statement over here, briefly here, that angle E is congruent to angle O, or that the measure of angle E is equal to the measure of angle O. We could say all those things because these two are vertical angles, and so are these two because they are across from each other. This works even if there are multiple lines, all right? So if I have these three lines right here going through each other, it creates more vertical angles. So I'm just gonna do a few of them, but like F and K are across from each other. So like this angle has to be congruent to this angle, and we could write that angle F is congruent to angle K, and that the measure of angle F is equal to the measure of angle K, all right? And then I'm not gonna write them out, but P and N, all right, those are across from each other, so those would be also congruent, and M and J go together because they're vertical angles, they're across from each other, all right? But again, vertical angles just means it's across from, all right? And then there are some situations where there are no vertical angles. So for instance, you noticed I said up here, these three lines, or in this case, it'd be these two lines. Well, in this case, there are not just three lines. There are actually 5 different lines because this line, if I were to continue it, would not be that line, so it just stops at this point. And then this one stops at that point, and this one stops at that point, so on and so forth. All right, so B is not across from any angle, all right? We would never say that B and D are vertical angles because it has to have continuing lines for this to work, all right? So if I were to draw this a little bit differently, like this, where I have all these points, these 3 lines going through this one point, and then I had B and D, then I would say that they are definitely vertical angles because now they're across from each other. But here they're not because this line would have to go on forever, and so would this one, and it just doesn't, all right? This point right here is common to all 5 of these lines, but they are 5 separate lines. This is just 3 lines that meet at one point. And if you ever get that, then vertical angles are across from each other.